We are back on the Zero Hour. With us is Cristina Finch, who is Managing Director of Amnesty International USA's Identity and Discrimination Unit. She is an adjunct law professor at George Mason University School of Law. She is also has served as Interim Managing Director of Government Relations at AIUSA. She focuses on women's issues as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender or LGBT, human rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, and multilateral issues. And we're here to talk about the abduction of the Nigerian schoolgirls. Cristina, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, this is a horrific event, of course, needless to say, and it highlights a number of broader issues as well as specific Nigerian issues. And I guess I would start by saying, how do you feel this corresponds to Amnesty International's mission to fight on? Well, you're doing great work on behalf of these schoolgirls. How does this intersect with Amnesty International's mission?
Thank you for saying that. Amnesty International has been working very hard to raise awareness about the current crisis in Nigeria and to shine a light on what's happening to these girls and to ask the world to stand up and ask for action. This fits very much into our core mission, which is making sure that everyone around the world has access to the full range of their human rights. And the right to live a life free from violence is a human right. And what we see is that, unfortunately, the example of the schoolgirls in Nigeria really underscores the global crisis, human rights crisis that violence against women is and how it affects every aspect of their life. So their ability to access education, for example, in this case, as well as being a human rights violation in and of itself.
Well, I thank you for that, and thank you for being on this case. And you've actually, in terms of the status of it, obviously these girls were taken some time ago. They had,
yes,
I
about
believe,
3 weeks ago.
April 15th, and they have yet to be rescued. Boko Haram roughly translates as well, haram means religiously forbidden, and Boko, I believe, roughly translates to education, modern education. And you've said that the situation is actually getting worse, if anything, that they've abducted more girls, attacked and killed more than 300 people, including burning some alive. Is that correct?
That is the reports that we are receiving. Unfortunately, this very much fits in with what Amnesty International has observed and reported about Boko Haram over the years, which is that, unfortunately, both Boko Haram and the Nigerian government, Nigerian military, have committed human rights abuses in this ongoing conflict.
And that gets to an issue I really wanted to talk to you about and explore with you a little bit, because I did a monologue before this hour began, where I talked about, visiting I used to work quite near Ground Zero before 9/11, and visiting the Ground Zero site last night, and my great concern that we not confuse the issue of this horrific group or some similarly horrific groups who use the name of Islam to justify their behavior with the world's 1.2 billion Muslims as a whole. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that, how we can fight against this horrific attack on the rights of these girls without creating another human rights crisis or encouraging one based on inter-religious hatred.
Oh, absolutely. And what we see is that violence against women is a global human rights crisis. It happens in every country in the world, which obviously incorporates a variety of faith traditions. So the statistic from the World Health Organization is that 1 in 3 women will experience violence in their lifetime. This is something that we see not only in Nigeria, but we see this in the United States. We see
Right.
this in Mexico. We see it in Europe. We see it all over the world. So it is not something that's attributable to a particular faith tradition or country or even area of the world. I think that is just very key to underscore. And it's one of the reasons that Amnesty International has been working to pass the International Violence Against Women Act, which would make ending violence against women a top diplomatic and foreign assistance priority for the United States.
That's great. That's very important that you're doing that. And by the way, I've also been tracking that all the major Islamic organizations in the U.S. and Europe and many other countries have joined in the effort to rescue these girls. What are you have the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. You've created a Tumblr, bringbackourgirls.tumblr.com. What else is Amnesty doing to try to rescue these schoolgirls?
Well, what Amnesty is doing is continuing to shine a light on the situation. We have, as you mentioned, the Tumblr, bringbackourgirls.tumblr.com. We're asking people to post messages of solidarity so the families of these girls and the girls know that the world cares and that the world is watching. We've called on the Nigerian government to do more to bring back the girls and to take action. And we've also have a rally planned for tomorrow in Washington, D.C. to continue to highlight this. But really, Amnesty International is a global movement, and so our sections around the world have been standing up, taking action, and calling on the Nigerian government to take action.
Now, Amnesty International issued a report just about 6 weeks ago, 5 or 6 weeks ago, on March 31st, stating that war crimes and crimes against humanity are continuing in Nigeria as violence escalates in the Northeast, and that in the first 3 months of the year, more than 1,500 people, more than half of them civilians, have been killed in Nigeria, both, as I understand, both as a result of increasing attacks from Boko Haram and because of the extrajudicial executions you mentioned by Nigerian security forces. And also, the report suggested that the Nigerian president, Goodluck Jonathan, has made insufficient efforts to free the abducted girls or bring an end to the violence. Are you still finding that today?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's very telling that it has been over 3 weeks since the girls were abducted, and we are only now hearing in the past week when social media coupled with protests from the girls' families and the Nigerian people themselves have led President Goodluck Jonathan, as you mentioned, to start making statements and ask the U.S. government and other governments for help in bringing back these girls. So we're very concerned by the inaction and inattention that we've noticed from the Nigerian government, and want to make sure that this situation doesn't fade from public consciousness, that people just start moving on to whatever the next topic is. And so we'll continue to shine a light on this and make sure that the world does not forget these girls.
So is it your sense that public pressure on the Nigerian government has an effect? Because sometimes we hear about repressive governments that frankly just don't care what you do or say about them. But your sense is that the international pressure is forcing the president and the Nigerian government to be more flexible and take more action on this issue?
My sense is yes. My sense is that coupled with, again, what we've seen is that the families of the girls have been protesting in Nigeria, have been raising their voices, and we're proud to be standing with those families to help lift up their voices. And I do think that it has made a difference, and we have seen a significant uptick in media interest over the past week in the United States in this story, but actually around the world as well. And we have seen the president, the Nigerian president, make more and more statements, ask for help, and start to talk about what he's going to do to help free these girls.
Very good. And now, one of the premises of this program, the Zero Hour, and I don't want to lead you to my conclusions, and I'm sure you won't let me if you disagree, but one of the conclusions of this program is that, events don't happen in a vacuum, that whether it's Boko Haram or other phenomena in other countries, there are sources that, without excusing the moral horror of their actions, that these kinds of groups breed in certain circumstances, one of which is repressive regimes and lack of economic opportunity. Is it your sense at all that the broader Nigerian economic and political situation is creating fertile ground for a group like Boko Haram?
Well, I think that you've actually hit on a really interesting point. Our report that you mentioned earlier shows that the Nigerian government themselves have been quite repressive, have committed human rights abuses for which nobody has been prosecuted. There's been complete impunity. And when you look at what's happening and that impunity, I mean, that certainly makes one wonder what effect that's having on the civilian population. So obviously, in addition to this particular situation where we very much want to see the over 200 girls freed, we are also obviously asking the Nigerian government to adhere to international human rights law and standards. Impunity for human rights violations should never be allowed.
Absolutely. And so I guess, on a human, if I can just digress for a second, on a human level, I was just wondering, Cristina, you deal with the most horrific case studies day in and day out on both the national and individual level. How do you keep your strength to get up and go to work every day and fight these kinds of battles again?
Well, I will tell you, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I firmly believe that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. I've seen some amazing changes happen during the time that I've been doing this work, and it keeps me motivated. I've watched the United States implement good laws that will help end violence against women, violence against LGBT people. I've seen the international community stand up and take action, and I've seen governments around the world respond to pressure from people like you and I, from activists on the ground. Your voice does make a difference. It frees prisoners of conscience. It stops governments from being able to look the other way. And so when I see the difference that people are able to make when they raise their voice together, it gives me hope, and it gives me the conviction to know that we are doing the right thing.
Well, it's a great answer, and it's great work that you're doing. Where can people go to learn more about it? AmnestyUSA.com is our website. AmnestyUSA.com/bringbackourgirls will bring you directly to the page with more information about the Nigerian schoolgirls. Well, I certainly hope that this situation with the schoolgirls resolves quickly, but if it doesn't, perhaps you'll come back and tell us more about what you're doing or some of your other campaigns. Cristina Finch, Managing Director of AI USA's Identity and Discrimination Unit, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you. And we will be back after this break with more. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.